The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
We're doing that. I might just edit that part in anyway.
Hey,
there you go.
There
now
we
you
go.
look comfortable.
There I am.
Now I'm seeing like the podcast happening. All right. Hey, it's episode number 141 and it is 102 days till the man burns as of this recording. I am in San Diego, California in the living room of one Cable King, who is my guest today. It is July 4th. It is fabulous Independence Day. It is America Day. America. And we've got ourselves a giant Middle Eastern man and a gay man talking about Burning Man.
Oh, am I coming out on this episode? Shit.
Finally. People have been wondering.
Mom, I got something to tell you.
We should just call this the gay agenda. That's the episode.
Trust me.
We're getting into it. So fun fact, I'm going to get into why, but I am actually winging today's intro. And there are multiple reasons for that. Reason number one, the show, I feel like the production experience has like become like super bloated and it's taking like forever to get new episodes out. And so it is not an accident that today I'm regrouping with someone whom I consider to be a part of my burner family. And we'll talk quite a bit in today's episode about our roots together. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but I introduce you to people when I'm saying this is Cable, is I introduce you as my burner daddy.
It's like a drag mom.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. So I am in Cable's living room right now, listeners. I'm happy to get to introduce you. This episode is long overdue, and Cable has been a very important person in my burner journey. Today's episode, there might be a DJ set at the end, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure. We're going to talk some more about why I'm considering dropping that part. But Cable King. Important that you know him. Cable is one of those very important community leaders that makes a lot of things happen behind the scenes in our local community. And it's one of the featuring and telling the stories of people like Cable is the primary reason why I started this podcast. Because I think it's incredibly interesting to really get into the weeds of what makes this community hum. And it's not the big burn we know is fucking amazing, right? Like you go, you see the big lights and, you know, the big giant man burn thing and all that. And like, don't get me wrong. All of that is amazing. And we're going to talk about that plenty on this podcast. But to me, the moments that I witness that truly just put like just the fingers of the community go right into my heart and I feel it, are the smaller moments that I watch the vastness of our community manifest itself. An example of that is, for me, an important moment was being at Saguaro Man in Arizona and watching the perimeter burn layout and watching the rangers protecting all of us and keeping a perimeter around the art piece that has been set ablaze and watching everybody kind of like be in formation, you know, like a smaller version of what we see at Burning Man. And I remember
the Rangers are the secret sauce of everything.
Yeah, 100%.
Like they're the thing that makes the loop happen.
Could not agree with you more. There's so many things about the Rangers that really make a lot of Burning Man in our community happen. They really are the best of us in so many ways. But I remember like just watching that, and it's moments like that that really hit me, and I say, holy shit, look at how vast and amazing our community is. And it is people like you who do the work that you do that we're going to be dissecting throughout today's episode. Cable has served for multiple years on SDCAP, which is San Diego's collaborative arts project. Is that correct? Okay. Yep. And SDCAP's primary fundraiser is YOUtopia, which is our San Diego regional burn. At its height, it was about 3,500 people. This last one was at about 1,200-ish.
Yeah, I would say 12.
We'll go about that, yeah. Which was about Saguaro Man was when I attended, which is kind of a common number for a lot of regionals. Cable has had 14 solo exploration Burning Man things, that thing out in the desert. And then after that, he's camped with camps like Eon and Pinkheart. He has Cable's bar for a long time was definitely such an important staple of YOUtopia. I was about to say it was passed around to a couple of different people.
Oh, it's still being passed around.
It's still being passed around.
It's had so many variations. It's like once you got those carports, you just like slap some paint on that, and you got a new camp.
Just passed around
because like no one wants to keep that stuff in their garage forever.
That's the correct way to do it. Maybe that's what it needs to be. We just need to pass infrastructure around. But this past couple of years in San Diego's community has been. There's been a bit of an adventure and ups and downs in energy. There's been some frustration, and then the pandemic happened, and I want to get into all of that story today with Cable, and I want to get to know Cable's story.
Is this a 12-hour episode?
17, I was imagining.
Yeah.
We aim for about an hour and a half.
It's a long story.
Cable, of course, is also associated with the Zara Sports League. We have also done an episode with XSL Lounge, and currently camps with Bitches Couch at YOUtopia. Are we allowed to say bitches on the podcast afterwards?
Everyone's a bitch.
Because I feel like, so we'll talk about it in a second. Let's just go ahead and start today's episode, though.
Okay.
And then, like...
standards and practices? Is that what we're worried about?
We might have to... I don't know. We might have to check in with the editors and see what they say.
I hear it on Bravo all the time, so I think it's fine.
Look, today's episode is entitled A Particular Set of Skills. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
Hey, sir.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no name.
Waity, okay, and then like the music stops and I'm like, I don't know, you just texted me slow to rise and I'm like, all right, maybe that's the name of the episode.
I did turn 50, so.
we will, you know what's happened a couple of times is that I've had episode names ahead of time and then we record the show and then like somebody, like some theme pretty much always rises throughout the conversation and then we do it. So there's for me there's a lot of thematic reasons as to how this episode is like coming together and when we're doing it and so for the listeners, like the kind of quick recap is that I discovered the Burning Man community coming up on just under a decade ago, and I discovered it through YOUtopia. And if you're a regular listener of the show, you've heard quite a bit about our regional burn here. And on a very challenging trip at YOUtopia, I met Duchess, who was Cable's partner at that time. And Duchess said, you need to come and meet people at the Red Wing weekly meetup. And then I went and I met Cable, and then Cable took me under his wing. And kind of like a lot of my first burn happened because you helped me make it happen, because I was like petrified and insecure and I wasn't sure what's okay and what's allowed. And it was like your Amazon Prime account that I ordered all my sparkly lights on. And
also just putting all the infrastructure for your first burn. I was like, let's see if you like it first. Like, you're like, you can take some stuff and like, if you like it, then you can go buy your second burn version.
It costs a lot. It
does.
adds up. It costs a fuck ton. And I can also tell you that like at that time for me, I was still, I mean, this is what, coming up on 10 years ago. I was still a lot deeper in like the Iranian don't spend money on things you enjoy baggage.
Yeah.
So I had a hard time consolidating in my brain spending, you know, it's like $1,500, $2,000 or whatever, like your first burn especially. Like I had a hard time consolidating that. And it's not like I had like money floating around. I was still a starving artist then too.
Yeah.
But that added to the layer of what are you doing spending money on a thing. And so it,
You're rolling the dice that time.
yeah.
Your first one, you don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
You're like, people tell me I should be there, but I like.
Well, I always remember too. I was telling you, I remember this exchange very clearly when I was like telling you, like, I feel like I'm doing all this preparation and I'm forgetting something. And you're like, yeah, you're 100% forgetting something.
Always. I still forget everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I was like, the lessons I learned like 5 burns ago, like, they're gone. Like,
Yeah.
I only remember like the last lessons.
the world keeps changing.
Yeah.
Well,
And you forget.
yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then
You get complacent.
yes, you get complacent. Also, when you get too like cocky, something will happen too. I feel like the universe, the Burning Man gods are just like, here's
I've got it this time.
Yeah.
This time it's going to be perfect. Nothing's going to go wrong
Yeah.
at this burn.
Yeah. Totally new curveball comes your way.
Yeah.
that you'd never expected.
Yeah.
Your first burn, what year was your first Burning Man?
97.
Wow. Okay. So, God, there's going to be a lot of this on this episode. I loved, strangely, like I loved that it wasn't much of it on social media. Like it still was like this thing that you're finding, you're discovering.
Oh, I didn't even. I mean, the way I found it was, I didn't even. I was working at a startup in San Francisco at the time, and we were working out of the loft of one of the CEOs, and his girlfriend and I like made friends, and then I was like, I need a vacation, and she's like, you do need a vacation, and she's like, she bought me a ticket to Burning Man.
That was her idea of a vacation.
$65.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, you could do it back then. You're just like, oh, you want to go? Here, $65. I'll do it for you. It was like, it's a night out, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, it's like you need to go do this. And I'm like, okay, I have never really gone camping before. What's that like? It's like I've done a little camping. It's like but she did not prepare me properly.
So I have her to thank to some extent for you helping me get so prepared properly.
Yeah, I know. Diane Liu, if you're out there.
Randomly listening to this burner podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you. You're the genesis of all this.
What so I remember at one point, and I kept meaning to ask you about this. You said that like even like your mom had been calling you cable since long before Burning Man. Is that correct?
Well, I mean,
it's
always a challenge with my mom. Like, she's like she wants to hold on to Chris.
Yeah.
But no, cable's like that came out of high school. Like,
how did that come out?
It's just is my best friend's middle name.
Okay.
And I just love the name, and it was his family name. So he came from the Cable clan of Scottish people, and then it became his middle name. And then when we went off to college, I was looking to like rebirth myself.
Where'd you go to high school?
Irvine.
I'm sorry?
Irvine.
Yeah.
Orange County.
Orange County.
Lovely Orange County. Very sheltered. Very, very, very sheltered.
Were you born there?
No, I was born in Washington.
Okay.
So I've basically lived up and down like the West Coast. But
I've been spending a lot of time in Orange County recently, as you're aware.
Yeah, it's gotten better.
It has certainly gotten better, but I just feel like the other day I was driving and I came upon like a corporate business center, and like I think like the sign literally said like corporate center, and it's just like this bland street, and it says corporate center. It's basically like a strip mall, and the first thing in that corporate center is a church.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, here's Orange County in a nutshell.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, Irvine is the ultimate corporate center because it's actually all owned by the Irvine company.
I keep wondering about that.
Yeah. So the Irvine company actually owns the property there. So people who, I don't know all the details of it, but basically if you own any, like all the strip malls and everything, like I did some work with them at once and I got a little bit of the business plan. But like if that 7-Eleven, 10% of the money that's made at that 7-Eleven goes to the Irvine company.
Wow. It's a full on like fiefdom.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like you want to build something here. Guess what?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not my cup of tea. You know, I don't dig Orange County.
I did run away.
But I do, but I get it. Like I get the attraction to it. Especially like for like Middle Easterners and stuff that like came out of like war and revolution, and because it's like so fucking clean, you can eat off the street.
Oh yeah, no, and like in my high school, like you know, it's like we're basically like 1/3 white, 1/3 Asian, 1/3 Persian. You know, like sort of, and mostly Iranian.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, you know, I was like, we're so diverse, and like, and then I realized, oh, there's no black people or Mexicans. It's like, but that's the sheltered part, you know. It wasn't until I left that I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see what was happening there.
Where did you? Yeah, and then so you took on the name Cable.
Yeah. So yeah, and I went off to college. I dropped out of college, but so I became summer of my senior year. Then went off to college, became Cable at that point, and never looked back.
Yeah.
You know, and it was good. It was a good break for me because I was also like, that's when I was coming out, and it was just able to leave behind all that. Yeah. All the expectations that Chris had, you know, in Irvine, everything that sort of like had been put upon me.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, okay, now you can sort of like forge your own path a little bit.
So the name served as like a tool to help in that coming out and rebirth kind of process.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that story from a few people. Interestingly enough, like the handful of people that I've met who I thought, you know, X was their playa name, and it turned out that they'd actually had a similar experience to yours when they directly chose to have a rebirth experience.
Yeah, and I don't think I knew what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, in retrospect, that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know,
was coming out challenging?
I mean, I knew from
you knew right
forever.
away. You knew right away. Yeah.
But I knew also not to talk about it. It wasn't, you know, it's like, you know, it was like the 80s and 90s. You know, it was like Ellen hadn't even done her thing yet.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it wasn't even talked about. It wasn't even on the radar. So, but I knew it wasn't something to talk about. So, you know, I waited until I went to college. And then, you know, it's like I went to a small college when I went in Claremont. You know, it's like, I think I was the first person on campus to come out.
Whoa.
Like, you know, it was 550 students or so. But yeah, so there's like all that pressure, and you know, it's like I should have gone to Berkeley instead. You know, it was like I think it would have been a better choice, but you know, it was you know, but I dropped out, and then I moved up to the Bay Area, and that's when I really sort of like started figuring stuff out because I was like out of the entire sheltered. Like I was like, oh, this is what the real world is like. Yeah, you know, it's like the diversity and the different points of view and everything, and
right.
You know, it was that was when everything opened up to me.
Yeah. I you know, we bicycled past Stonewall in New York. And it's so interesting because like I feel like you know, in my 20s I still had this like very keen awareness of how difficult it was for you know, your generation and previous generation coming out, and like now it's super hip.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, it's a whole new world. I can only imagine the person I would be if I had been able to even just have the media that's out there now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, every gay movie through the 90s even was like, they died.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and it's like the year I came out was actually the height of the AIDS epidemic. It's like the number one year where of AIDS deaths.
Yeah.
It was right before like all the new medications came out. So, you know, it's sort of a traumatizing like moment to like blossom into your sexuality.
Right.
And, you know, it's like the generation that's like 10 years older than me is mostly dead.
Yeah.
Which is like weird. Like whenever I meet like someone who's like 60, 65, like gay, I'm like, either they usually came out late or they had like a very different experience. Like, it's like somehow they made it through. So, it's like, I don't think, a lot of, people really understand that history, like who are coming out now.
No,
but
no, it's still, I mean, like to have like folks share from that generation, how many funerals they went to.
Yeah.
And I mean, I lived in a Middle Eastern war and I didn't have that experience,
right.
Like it was still like further away.
Mm-hmm.
But to have like, and it's the thing that kind of like comes up for me. And I wonder, like you knew you were gay. Was there ever any concerns about like, am I wrong in being gay? Is the world showing me evidence that this is wrong? And I'm projecting, by the way, onto like
no,
but
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I mean, here's the thing. It was always just something I knew, but I don't even know. Like, so the way I sort of worked it, like, I like to make jokes and stuff, and like, and I also knew that in order to be authentic to myself, like I never had a girlfriend. I never even tried to play that game. But like all my friends were nerds.
Yeah.
And it's like we all was a mixed like there's only one friend in my entire group who even had a girlfriend all through high school. And so there wasn't that pressure. And I think there was a little bit of self-selecting on my part.
Yeah.
And I was very much a loner. For most of my life, I was very confident in myself and just being who I am.
Yeah.
And that's, it's just me and my mom growing up mostly. So I just didn't have a lot of that external pressure.
Yeah.
So I was sort of felt confident in that. At the same time, like I knew what not to say.
Yeah.
And like I knew like how it could affect me, but once I had my freedom to like come out and do my thing, I was like, no, these people got to learn something. Yeah. Remember, I used to go to like frat parties at UC Berkeley, and it's like everyone would be always like, it was like always some gay joke every time.
Sure.
Yeah, and like I let them like get deep into it, and be like, yeah. I'd laugh harder, but I just really like to suck. I'm keeping your standards and practices here.
Yeah.
I was like, but it's like, let them get like deep on it, and then like be like, now how uncomfortable are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I can tell you I'm a straight guy, and I've absolutely used that tactic.
Yeah.
Because it's actually quite hilarious, like how uncomfortable. We're gonna categorize those who are not comfortable enough with their sexuality will get.
Yeah.
If they're cornered into that, because it's like, I don't even want to test the possibility of this feeling like something.
You're right.
But yeah, no, I for me, it's like, I'm 41 and I'm like happy and I have an amazing community, and I still every few days look at what I'm doing with my life and go, oh fuck, am I doing this right? Oh, like, should I have gotten married? Should I have done the mortgage thing? Should I have done that? And I mean, I'm dealing with that on a regular basis. So I'm like, that's what I'm saying. I'm imagining what your experience must have been like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the self-doubt is always there. Like, it's like the path is not taken. But I also like, here's the thing I've sort of like figured out. Like, I mean, you're right at that age where like is right when I started to realize like, oh, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So the 40s were great as far as like, I just turned 50. So the 40s were great because all that sort of self-doubt started to go away because I realized all the choices I made were actually paying off. Yeah. Like making those hard choices and walking through the fire rather than around it. Like it's the long game. It doesn't feel comfortable in the moment. And you do live with all that self-doubt and you question yourself. But being authentic to yourself, because I look around and I see like other people who I was still am friends with, or like, but we were, at a certain point in time, we were at the same place and moment, and then we all made different choices. And some of them, it's like I look at their lives and I'm like, yeah, you're sort of living a fraud a bit.
Right. Yeah.
And, and I look at mine as like, I just have such a great community around me. It's like, and it's hard like for, people to have good friends in their, in their 40s, and people go off and have families and stuff. And, everything gets broken up, and, it's like part of the entire, like, it's what's happening in our culture in general, people not finding meaning, and they're like, so we end up in all these like weird polarized politics and stuff because people don't have that core, that like community and family to like work from. And so, the Burning Man communities brought that to me in so many ways, where I can have purpose and do things that are super meaningful to me and others, and give those people opportunities that they wouldn't normally have in their lives.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of my journey and having gone through that and seen how much value there is on the back end of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, the struggle's real, but it's definitely worth it. So
I'm just like that thought process, like the emotional sort of infrastructure that you had in place, like that attitude of fuck it, they'll have to figure it out because I'm not hiding who I am. That's incredibly healthy and balanced. And I'm curious where that came from. What do you attribute that to?
It's gotta be my mom mostly, probably. I think, like, she's like a no BS person, like, and she immigrated from Berlin when she in her teens. She was born in 42. I'm giving away all my like bank security questions now.
Yeah,
right?
Excellent. Yeah.
I was like, should I give you her maiden name too?
Fuck, that's what this show is. It's a whole elaborate scheme to crack into your Bank of America account.
Yeah, she's very independent, and she like had an idea of what she wanted for her life, and it didn't always work out like in exactly how she planned, but even like with moving to Irvine, like, it's like we didn't have the money to live in Irvine, but she was an apartment manager.
Yeah.
And so she got to live in the place where she was managing. So she thought about this. She's like, it's like, I have a kid like who's pretty smart, and, it's like, I can't be living in a place with bad schools.
Right.
So she figured out a way to get me into like the best schools in California, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's like, and I was surrounded by people who taught me like what entitlement looks like.
Wow.
It's like, I didn't, and part of having gone through the experience and the struggle of knowing you're an outsider and all these other things, but then living in an environment like Irvine where you do see how entitlement works and really what, it's like, can you use those things for good now?
Yeah.
Because what the real world is. It's like, so it's all these like things that sort of come together. It's like little lessons you learn along the way, and you sort of see the inside of other parts, but your experience, even though you like fit in or are part of something, it's not you. And that's how I felt about Orange County. I could pass. And it's even with being gay. It was like I could always pass it straight. Like no one, like it wasn't.
It's almost like Orange County was like living in a psychedelic, like having this experience that's such a contrast to like what your direct experience is on the inside. So like you can have this unit of measurement of like where I want to be, where I don't want to be.
Mm-hmm. And you feel and you see what your authentic self is and versus what the world's telling you you're trying to be. And there's no other place other than Orange County where they're trying to be something that is not anything real.
Yeah. Wow. Where was Dad?
Dad was he was about. He was like he wasn't an active part of my life. He wasn't bad. It's actually like probably when the interesting thing was like, I don't have a bad experience with my dad. But he like sort of left when I was 2, and he didn't want the family thing and all that, and so it was just me and my mom,
Right.
and it's like he sent the checks, $75 a month to raise a kid.
Interesting.
I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, that's good money, right? that's how much it costs, right?
Yeah. It's like one dinner in Irvine.
Yeah. But it's like we just didn't have a relationship, and then there was a point where he was coming to his end of life, and he's like trying to reconnect. And I'm like,
Recently.
Yeah, like maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, interesting.
He died fairly young.
Yeah.
But it was like, sort of went through that process of like, is this a meaningful thing for me?
Right.
And I'm like, not really. It wasn't part of my experience.
Yeah, I've had a few people in my life who've had kind of similar experiences to that, with parents that took off, or family that took off that weren't a part of their lives, and they were interested in connecting later, and they're like, meh, like that kind of.
Yeah, and I don't feel bad about it. And I was like, I mean, he had options.
No.
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of feel like that way in general. It's like I don't try and get attached to what's supposed to be like. It's like, oh, but you have this opportunity to reconnect with your long lost dad. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I just be super.
It's also by the way, it's also why I don't do like the hereditary test thing. I don't want to know like who I'm connected to that I haven't met already. I'm like, if you weren't part of this already,
I would want to meet them.
You really?
Yeah, I'm super curious. I don't know. It's interesting to me to like look at my parents and observe how much of them is in me. My parental figures, it's interesting. They're both sort of in my I guess they were in my life. My dad wasn't there for a big chunk of time. He showed up in order to burn some bridges and cause some violence and then leave. But what I didn't get from either of my parents was this thing that you're attributing to your mom, like that kind of like stronger like core,
right?
That sense of inner light. Yeah, I didn't have my parents call or text me. It's just some sort of obligation that I have to respond to.
Yeah, yeah. No. It's like, but I mean, it was all the struggle. It's like, and I don't know. It's everyone's got a certain thing they got to like go through.
Definitely.
And it's like, it's like in these moments you're like, what are the choices you make? And just like looking back on things at this point in my life, it's like all those really hard decisions, the ones that you were like, I don't know, this is so hard and I don't want to do it this way, but it seems the right way.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that have the payoff.
What was the hardest one of those after your time in high school, but before Burning Man, that you can think of?
Well, I mean, I think moving up to Berkeley, it's like was a big deal. So when I did come out, like I say, it wasn't like a big deal. Like my mom wasn't happy about it, and so and I was always super close to her, and so it's like I knew I couldn't go home.
I've met your mom. I would have never thought that.
Yeah, no, she's a great person, and it's like, and like I do a like pride party every year, and she learned in her 70s like how to like do balloon twisting and stuff, and so she like. Now she's like does the pride balloons and stuff, and like it's different, but it was a journey to get there. And even now it's like when I've been reprocessing like it's funny when you hit these milestones, it's like you sort of like look back on your life, and so like there's been like various traumas that I've like had in my head about things, and so like go and talk to the person that I like had the trauma with, and we'll just replay the story. And like one of them was just the coming out experience with my mom. And turns out like our stories were completely different from each other of what happened.
Yeah.
And it wasn't And it took 30 years later to like realize that we were both like telling ourselves different things about the entire experience. And then like after that, it just sort of lost its meaning.
Wow.
I was like, well, why didn't we do that earlier?
Yeah. Was her memory that she was a lot more supportive?
I mean, it wasn't even that. It wasn't even the supportive part because I mean, she understands like, but I think part of what was driving her was different than what I thought was driving her.
Mm.
You know, and I don't want to get into
Sure.
details of it all, but like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, it was just, you just realize how all these facts that they had based, like she was basing her thing on, and all these facts that I was basing mine on,
Yeah.
were all flawed
Wow.
because we were assuming things about each other.
Yeah.
You know,
That's amazing.
yeah,
And that's a fucking hard thing to get into that conversation.
yeah. But I've also like realized like, you know, it's like, I like having those hard conversations.
Mm.
Like I've learned that I'm really good at it. It's sort of like what I think makes me good at what I'm doing now, community wise, because I'm not afraid of like addressing it.
Right.
Because I was like, no, like we all know this is an issue, right? So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I was like, everyone's gonna have an opinion, be a little sore about it, but we're not. We're all trying to get to a certain place, right? Where no one's here with bad intentions.
Yeah.
So how can we?
Does it feel like sometimes people don't want, I mean, because overwhelmingly it's because humans are generally afraid of confrontation, I would say.
Hmm?
It does feel like sometimes people are afraid of addressing it because they don't want their narrative challenged.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, this is like, the thing is, on these narratives, we build other stories on top of these narratives.
Yeah. There's this hero, there's this villain, there's this other thing that I did because of, yeah.
So one of my favorite quotes is a Joseph Campbell one, which is, the villain is the hero of his own story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I always come back to that. Even when I'm talking to someone, like, and I'm not, I'm like, what? How is it that they think they're right?
Right.
And if I can get to a place of understanding where they're coming from, then I've like reached a place where we can actually maybe have a conversation. Because I'm not going to be, I can like address those fundamental things. But people don't want to let go of that, you know, those things because they built the stories on top of that.
Right.
What they're really afraid of is their entire house collapsing.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is like, yes, all these things will collapse around it. You know, it's like, but the foundation that you then rebuild on is now something you can actually work with.
Right.
You know, because you get to a spot where you just keep on building on that, like those bad stories you're telling yourself, and you're getting all this dissonance now in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, things aren't adding up anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're using bad information and you're telling yourself the wrong stories. So when it falls apart, you're like, okay, it was just that item, so I'm just going to redo that different. But really, you gotta like work on the foundation again.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be a lot of work. It's scary.
Oh no, it's hard work.
Yeah. If you've like spent,
There's a reason people don't do it.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's not fun.
If you've spent 40 years, 50 years, whatever, being this person who has this story about themselves, and then you have to undo a whole bunch of that, it brings up all kinds of like, what does anything even mean?
Mm-hmm.
Does anything have meaning? Has any part of my experience had meaning? And it can be, it's a lot.
It is.
It's exhausting.
It is.
And it's, I think the biggest value in my observation experience that Burning Man has, I think that Burning Man is, one of the ways that I refer to it, and when we say Burning Man, by the way, we're talking about like the experience, the culture, the community, not just the thing in the desert. But it is a exploration of reality and identity, and I kind of call it the airport of consciousness. There's some people landing, there's some people coming, there's some people that just work there,
Right, yeah.
and they're never going to do the travel. And it's interesting because like I think a lot of us that are attracted to this kind of community and culture, in one way or another, are attracted to whatever that is, whatever that part of the journey is.
Mm-hmm.
That we are kind of like, we want to do this dissection. We want to do the rebirth experience.
Yeah. Well, and once you go through it with yourself and you really start getting good at it,
Yeah.
you start doing it with other people. And that's where I just randomly last night I had the weirdest experience here. My boyfriend was smoking on the patio, and like I usually don't hang out there, like, but he's like, come on, join me. And in like the minute I sat down, someone like walked over. She was drunk, but she was, it's like I live in the like we're the mix here.
Yeah.
So I'm
It's a fun neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a fun neighborhood.
It's a fun neighborhood, yeah.
And she just walked up and sat down in the empty chair, and like she was going through it.
Yeah.
And she just started talking, and I was like, she's like, I've lived here for a couple of years. I see like I have these like rainbow lights in front of the house, like it's very noticeable.
Yeah.
And she just sat down, and she's like, I just feel like I need to talk to someone right now, and she was deep in it. And my boyfriend's also very comes from the healing sort of world. And we just saw like this thing in her that we've all seen in ourselves too.
Yeah.
And when we need that moment of where you can talk to someone, we're like, I got 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And when she walked out, it was like she transformed because someone was finally listening to her and understood where she was coming from. And I feel like in our community, we have so many people who are willing to give of themselves like that, who are willing to like not see you in your trauma as being a problem, but are willing to step into there and say, I've been there too.
Yeah.
And because you don't end up at Burning Man by accident.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you've been through something.
Yeah.
It's like maybe the Insta kids, but
I always say the thing is like you'll see it like local festivals, people were like kind of drop like flies like coming up. But Burning Man, it's almost like if you're gonna go to Burning Man, every morning you wake up, Burning Man's like, are you sure?
Right. Oh yeah. Like, do you want to do this again?
Are you sure? Yeah. Well, you're describing sounds like exactly the kind of thing that would happen like on Playa or at a regional. Like somebody just,
no, my life has turned into like living Playa. Like it's been slowly, it just sort of happened because I just took all those lessons and I started bringing them home.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm not dealing with people who are not authentic anymore.
Yeah.
It's like I can have fewer friends and that's fine, but they need to be on the same page at some level.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. I don't, I've generally found that I don't really have anybody in my inner circles. And mind you, my inner circle is like really fucking big. Like it's a lot bigger than it used to be.
Oh, me too.
Yeah,
like
it's like, it's huge, but like it's so big. Mine is so much bigger than yours. Like I'm just kidding. Same size. But the point being, like, overwhelmingly, like we don't have anybody in our inner circles who isn't ready at any given moment to go really, really deep.
Right.
We just don't have that.
No.
Like
it's not allowed.
Yeah.
It's like I tell people, I'm like, when I first meet them, I was like, I'm not an easy friend to have. Like you will be challenged.
No, I mean, when I came into the community at first, like up until like that Red Wing, when I met you, leading up to that, I was always very, very careful about how to speak at any social gathering, because at any given moment, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the weird guy. And then I found that when I came into this community, even before I went to Burning Man itself, I was like, oh shit, no matter what I say and do, I am not that guy. Because like everyone's that guy.
Oh yeah. Even like every once in a while, even within the community, someone will be like, oh my God, that person's so weird. I'm like, have you looked in the mirror? I was like, you're not here by accident either. Like,
Totally, yeah.
Give them some space here. Okay. This is like neurodivergence on crack.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We are, we are special.
I love that. So, I mean, it sounds like, running right into the fire. So you eventually go to work for startup. There's a bunch of other adventures that happen. You get the ticket to Burning Man. You go to Burning Man.
Quit my job, which you're not supposed to do.
You quit your job to go to Burning Man.
No, afterwards.
Oh yeah, and your postpartum blues.
Yeah,
Was it like
well, I mean, I needed to anyways, but
was it within the 30 days?
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what everybody told me too. 30 days. Don't. In fact, I'm pretty sure you even told me that. Don't make any big decisions within 30 days.
Yeah. No. I think it was. I may have not left within 30 days, but it was. Yeah. It was like I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I was.
What was it about that job that wasn't aligned with who you are at that time? I
mean, I was burned out. Number one, like it was too much.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it's not like I felt okay. Well, we don't really want to get into the San Francisco journey because that's its own podcast.
Okay.
But
here's a Cliff's notes. Yeah.
So I quit my job. Then randomly the company got acquired.
Okay.
And I had stock options, and the only reason I could cash out my stock options was because I'd quit my job, because they'd actually vested when I quit.
So so something great happened from the quitting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I ended up with a big chunk of money from this thing, and so I spent the next 2 years trying to be an artist. So I got a warehouse in San Francisco, and I was doing a thing, and it was a thing.
What kind of art?
So here's the I mean, I was never like the artist. I was the facilitator artist. I sort of look at like what I'm doing now as that was like my practice run, because what I really wanted to do is because it was like at that tech period, and I was like, I want to do this thing where we're combining like technology and the arts, and then providing venues that we could like do Burning Man-ish things.
Yeah.
Larry Harvey actually came to one party once.
All right. Nice.
Yeah. You wouldn't know me from Sam, but and so I was trying to do this thing, but I had the wrong people who were involved, and it wasn't. They weren't burners. They were just people I knew who were good at various things that, like I had a good sound guy, like he did professional sound, but didn't get the ethos and all these things. They just didn't work out. And, in San Francisco, when you have too much free time, can distract you.
Yeah. There's quite a bit to do.
Yeah. So I did all of it.
Yeah.
So at some point, San Francisco kicked me out, rolled down. I rolled down the state.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up in San Diego.
That's great.
I was I rolled past Orange County.
Can I